The Baltimore Ravens injuries are continuing to mount as a big Week 4 matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs is on the horizon.
And with those injuries comes the potential of that Kansas City game, putting this Ravens ball club at 1-3.
To prevent that 1-3 start, we gotta beat Patty Mahomes, a team that looks a little worse for wear, but can still be quite dangerous. We'll touch on this next and more on the Raven Squad Show.
Rise and shine, it's the Ravens Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Ravens Squad Show here with you on this Wednesday evening. Appreciate everybody for being here today and making the Locked On Ravens Squad Show a part of your evenings. We have plenty to dive into. The Ravens and the Chiefs will face off in a Week 4 matchup, as well as the fact that we most definitely have to talk about the injury situation that is going on right now, particularly on the Ravens defensive line. So here with me today, I'm Kevin Oestreicher, and with me it's former Ravens receiver Qadri Ismail, and of course Sam Njoku. We're diving into everything Ravens right here. Again, this is a massive week, and maybe much more massive than we thought it was going to be, especially considering that both of these teams are 1-2. I didn't expect that for sure. Want to remind everyone and tell everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, guys. Well, I think we have to start off with the defensive concerns mounting because they clearly, piling up, and injuries are the main culprit here, not to mention that, the play hasn't particularly been inspiring on the field so far through 3 weeks. And at this point, you look at the injury report for the Ravens and the entire starting defensive line not out there for the Ravens on Wednesday. Obviously, Nnamdi Madubuike being the big one there. Travis Jones, Broderick Washington. You can't generate pressure when your top guys are out. It's very hard to do that unless you have a lot of depth. And hey, it's a big issue when the depth also is out with injuries. So not what you want to see through the first 3 weeks of the season. I want to start with you on the injury front here. We know that Travis Jones, I think he only played 2 snaps in that fourth quarter against the Lions. He was taking on double teams left and right and trying to play a big role, but really couldn't get any push there. We know how important Madubuike is. Broderick Washington as well. Washington has the ankle, and it says on the injury report, Travis Jones, he has a knee issue. Those lower body injuries, obviously we'll talk about Madubuike and his injury in a little bit, but those lower body injuries, are they a little tougher for some bigger guys to come back from, or is it just kind of status quo there?
Oh, it is tougher. It's different when you have the lower body injury because you got all that weight that you have to lug around, if you will. And then you add into the fact that you have another human who is equally large and you're going up against each other, that mass versus mass, something has to give. And in that giving comes a soft tissue injury. You add on to that the traditional style of training that kind of pushes you into some movement patterns that when you do go max power drive or max neural drive in games, you're going to lead to some level of a breakdown. So I think bigger picture wise, yeah, this is a test for the Ravens' depth, but also their frontline guys. How well can they sustain throughout the year? That's going to be the biggest question mark.
I agree completely. It's going to be how they can survive. The injuries are crazy. Let's just call it how we see it. They're going to have to totally revamp these guys. If, in fact, Travis Jones doesn't play, if, in fact, Washington isn't able to play, we don't know yet. It's only Wednesday, so we'll see how it goes. But, man, it is a pill to swallow if these guys are unable to play. Now, I will say that the Lions present a tough matchup. We talk about Sonic and Knuckles, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, they're no slouches. I think some Ravens fans may be underestimating how potent an offense, at least rushing, the Lions were. And the Chiefs, even though we know them to be the Chiefs, they don't have that ability. So we may not see the type of numbers we saw against the Ravens in the run defense department, but as far as getting your hands on pass, that is a great much of a concern because you're putting a lot of pressure on your pass rushers, your edge rushers to get to him, and not so much on the interior. So it's going to be tough for the Ravens with this, but I do think that the injuries are a concern overall. You rather it happen now than later. I mean, we've been saying it all week, but an issue coming up in this game against the Chiefs.
Yeah, the problem is that even with Madubuike out there in the first 2 weeks, they really couldn't generate anything. And we saw that, look, Travis Jones takes up those double teams, and that allows Madubuike to work freely. And we saw Travis Jones take on a lot of double teams in week 3 against the Lions, and still just the pressure wasn't getting home with 4. They were sending corner blitzes at times, and that wasn't getting home. And you just saw Jared Goff get it out quickly. And it's those types of moments where when you are looking, and I put out on social media kind of what the Ravens are working with their defensive line. They made a couple of moves on Wednesday. They signed Taven Bryan, who was actually taken 3 picks before Lamar Jackson was in that 2018 draft, and then Josh Tupou, who's been on and off of their practice squad for the last couple of years. Right now, the Ravens' healthy interior defensive linemen, guys, it's Aeneas Peebles and John Jenkins. Those are your only 2 on the active roster right now. You have CJ Okoye, Brent Urban, Bryan, and Tupou on the practice squad. That's a pretty tough spot to be in, especially considering that you cannot afford to drop to 1-3. And the Chiefs haven't necessarily been this like potent offense, right? Sammy mentioned it right when we kicked off the show, right? They are looking a little worse for the wear considering what they have been used to. And this is a team that the Ravens have not been able to beat. It was really what Odafe Owe had that punch out, and that was the game that they won, I think, in the Lamar era. But you have an opportunity to get back to 500 and put a rival in another, what should be contender, into a 1-3 hole. But that Chiefs run game is looking to get started. Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, it hasn't been great for them. Both of them are averaging right around 3.5 yards per carry. The offensive line has had some issues there. I mean, it seems like, and we'll get into the matchups a little bit later, but Q, when you talk about kind of jump starting a team, you don't want to be that team that jump starts the Chiefs, right? They've looked really slow and really bad on offense. You don't want to be that team that jump starts them, but the question is, like, do they have enough guys, if all 3 of those aren't able to go, to make any sort of push? John Jenkins was, I think, the Ravens' best defensive player, not named Nate Wiggins, out there on Monday night. Are we just going to hope for a John Jenkins legacy game? I mean, how are you feeling about the state of this crew right now and what they might have to work with? Because a rookie, a veteran, and a couple of practice squad guys, if nothing's able to work for him this week injury-wise.
Well, the bottom line is this. The Lions rushed for over 200-plus yards on them. That's the worst in Ravens history. When you look at the legacy of the Ravens, they hadn't had a 72-yard jaunt since back in the mid-2000s. You look at the way they had 2 90-plus yard drives driven on them. I don't know if we can name enough guys on the roster or EDC can sign enough D linemen to stop this bleeding that we're seeing from this Ravens ball club. Plus, as you said, Pacheco and company, I mean, they haven't really been lighting it up. And so in my mind, I'm like, all right, Patrick Mahomes is the guy, and you can't stop the other team's guy. Like, if I'm Andy Reid, I'm like, all right, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's go out there, let's test this Ravens ball club and see whether or not we can get our running game going, get what we want to do, and reestablish our abilities to be successful. They went up against a Giants team that I would normally be like, it's the Giants. But the Giants are, just in the same boat as the Ravens are. The Ravens have a 1-2 record. The Giants are 0-3, and they're making a quarterback change. We don't got to worry about a quarterback change because we got the greatest quarterback in the league, but we just can't string together wins. And part of the problem, you go up against Jared Goff, you go up against Allen, and now you're going up against Mahomes. Those are top-tier quarterbacks. You felt all bold and brash and confident going up against 40-year-old Lamar Jackson. Well, time for you to start feeling bold and brash going up against the upper tier echelon quarterbacks. And now here comes Patrick Mahomes. Now you need to stop the run and not allow the big play to happen, because that's what really Andy Reid is going to be doing. His game plan is the Ravens, they're not a very good run defense. We're about to show these guys. And Pacheco, I promise you, he's going to be going out there doing what he needs to do. The Lions, they did not get like these big gashes, but they kept chipping away until that Ravens defense got worn down. You have long sustaining drives like you had against the Lions, the Chiefs will win this game.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll touch on the matchups a little bit later, so I won't harp on it too much, but you're absolutely right. If the Ravens do not stop the run early, and I mean decisively, they do not have the faith in their DBs right now, especially with the guy like Patrick Mahomes, to really sell to stop the run. They cannot afford to sell and stop the run, because I don't care how Patrick Mahomes looked like the last 3 weeks or 2 years. He will make you pay. Xavier Worthy was a full participant in practice today. I'm just saying the Ravens need to do their due diligence in stopping the run. I don't know how they're going to do it. It's a cohesive unit. It takes all 7 players, not just, the defensive tackles. Roquan Smith, it is his job to stop the run. If you can't stop the tight ends in the passing games, that's not your game. Sure, we'll live with it. But when it comes to stopping the run, and he did not look good on Monday, ladies and gentlemen. He did not look good at all. He was not an enforcer. We're used to Ray Lewis. We've seen guys like Ray Lewis in the past come in there and just attack the hole. He's trepidatious back there. He needs to be decisive in attacking the hole, attacking the running backs, because, again, this Chiefs running game cannot get going. If it does, the Ravens lose, no doubt.
They need to take advantage of their opportunities early and often. Although, guys, we know that it is not just those 3 defensive linemen that missed practice on Wednesday. Unfortunately, that is not where the injuries stop for the Ravens, as 3 others did not participate in practice. Now, Isaiah Likely, he was limited again, so hopefully he's working up to a big game in Kansas City. Hopefully he's going to be able to play. But we also had Calvin Noy still not practicing with his hamstring injury. Ronnie Stanley popped up here with an ankle injury. And then Patrick Ricard still not practicing with the calf injury. I find it hard-pressed if he's not practicing tomorrow at the very latest that he will play, because he needs to work his way back into game shape, which begs the question, and Sam, I'll start with you here. Why didn't they just put him on injury reserve? Was there, and again, we're not going to know the ins and outs of everything that's going on there, but just like, you could have had the roster spot. You could have added somebody if they even thought there was a chance that he was not going to be able to play all these 4 weeks. Maybe they were kind of riding out hope that he was going to be able to, but those calf injuries are tricky. And if he's not able to go this week, maybe a missed opportunity to keep a guy, or maybe get a contribution from somewhere else.
Yeah, I think they were, like you said, just hoping that it'll be good to go. It just hasn't worked out that way. I won't harp too much on it, but certainly the loss of Pat Ricard has been felt throughout this team. I think we all know how much Pat Ricard means to this team. He's not just a fullback. He's a tight end. He's an offensive lineman. He is really there to help. You've seen the difference between Rosengarten's play and even in certain instances Ronnie Stanley's play when he's not out there. So having him back eventually will be big. That's why I'm not too concerned about the O-line. Obviously, 30 pressures in the grand scheme of things, obviously that number is a little inflated. But regardless, having him in there, along with Isaiah Likely, is going to be huge for this team eventually, whenever that is. But yeah, it would have been nice to know ahead of time that Pat Ricard wasn't going to be playing for the first 4 weeks, because maybe you keep a guy like Jalen Armour-Davis. Maybe you have another spot for one of the guys you had in the practice squad, or maybe trade a guy in with the space you have. Who knows? But regardless, they're likely not going to have him. He hasn't practiced since August, if that. So I don't expect him to be out there. It's going to be another tough outing where Lamar Jackson is going to have to be Superman in order for this offense to get things going.
Interesting, because I'm looking at the way they came into this year offensively. It was as if you just needed to show up, and you got all this talent around, Lamar Jackson. You have a Hall of Fame credentialed running back in Derrick Henry. The next steps are going to be for Zay Flowers. Bateman gets a strong extension. But the elephant in the room was the lack of the offensive line being honed in and taken care of. And I think that is the arrogance / fault of EDC. It is the stubbornness of Harbaugh. And so now that we are seeing the inconsistency, we're left to kind of sit there and look around and like, well, what really is going to happen for this team? Because the 7 sacks that Lamar had, while it looked like he was holding the ball, in some instances that pocket is collapsing, and the way in which the ball, or I should say the routes were going on down the football field, like that's where Lamar should have taken off and run. But then there were other times where he didn't have an opportunity. And then there were other times where simply, like, goodness, the talent was in a position where that coverage unit was enforcing their will on the Ravens receiving corps. Everyone offensively should be looking at themselves and saying, how can they do better? And we're saying this about a team that put up 30 points. Like it's so crazy how in normal circumstances we were like, oh, 30 points, they win. But the lack of their offense being able to be consistent, the untimeliness of Derrick Henry's fumbles, and then you add in all of the defensive woes as we're talking about, you have a 1-2 ball club, and that's why you are what your record says you are.
Yeah, it's a huge week for the Ravens. They need to get a win here. And coming up with the second part of the show, we will talk about Nnamdi Madubuike in a little bit more detail because he is the big one here, already ruled out for week number 4. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot coming up on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. And when you look at what's going on in the NFL right now, the season being here, it is incredible. The NFL season is here. FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building same game parlays, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. And it makes every game even more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. And this Ravens and Chiefs week 4 game, right now the Ravens are 2.5-point road favorites at Arrowhead, which is crazy. But hey, that number, hopefully the Ravens can get a win here. And over on FanDuel, if you're rocking with the Ravens, you can hopefully get rewarded for that. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. We return. Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Kevin Oestreicher, Kadri Ismail, Sam Njoku. We're all still talking Ravens football with you here. Now, we here on Locked On Ravens Squad Show, we bring you content every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time and after every game. So we react to every game after it as well. And also, of course, you can tune into the regular Locked On Ravens show that is hosted 5 days per week on this channel. We have a lot of other content here as well. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Now, guys, let's get into Nnamdi Madubuike a little bit here. Obviously, neck injuries are nothing to play around with. They're very concerning. You know, you see the word neck on the injury report. You hear them talking about a neck injury, and you get concerned off the bat. And we really have not heard much of a substantive update from the Ravens on this. We're still kind of waiting for how serious or not serious it is, but we can kind of infer that it is something that is probably on the more serious side, considering the fact that Nnamdi is already ruled out for week number 4, and the fact that, you know, you kind of just we went through this with Zach Orr, right? He had to medically retire due to a neck injury. We've seen this happen. And of course, we all want Nnamdi to be okay from a football perspective, but just from a human perspective as well, just hoping that everything is okay with him and everything will be okay. It seems like, look, this is not the update you want to hear, obviously. He's already ruled out. That's already not a good sign in the first place. But Q, when you hear the word neck injury, those words together, I mean, what is your concern level with this thing right now, knowing what we know, which is really not anything at all?
So there's two things. I have C3, C4 neck fusion. The cervical spine for what could potentially be career ending is usually when there's a signal change on the spinal cord. And so when you get an MRI, you'll see that there is literally some discoloration. It looks like a white dot that would indicate some level of a disc bulge or just a full-blown eruption at that whatever level in the cervical spine. And so if you have that bulging disc and there's enough room in your column of your spinal cord to, well, I should say the spinal column, so your spinal cord can move around and there's enough spinal fluid and you don't have a narrowing of the spine, then there's some rehabilitation that can be done to help heal it. If they feel that you have a narrowing of the spine and the spinal stenosis, as they would call it, you are having some symptoms that are affecting your arm strength and or nerve pain and or limitation in your mobility of your neck, well, that's when they're going to start talking about alternatives. And those alternatives are, hey, we might have to shut this guy down and call it a career. So that's what we're looking at, and potentially what I'm sure they're saying with Nnamdi. Nnamdi probably had some level of numbness in his fingertips or, feeling a little bit whatever off, and they had to kind of go down that road of figuring it all out. So it's a speculation. Yep. Based upon what we are hearing, though, that's where I am trying to piece together for the listening audience.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm trying to piece everything together. From what I understand, it looks like he was at the game. He didn't have a neck brace on or anything like that. So that's even more scary because that tells me that it's not anything that, could be worked out with maybe a massage or maybe, rest or icing or anything like that. It seems like it's something deeply concerning. And John Harbaugh specified symptoms, meaning that after the game, he saw or felt something in himself to tell the coaching staff or the training staff and what have you. So that's a concerning spot. And just Kevin, you mentioned that Zach Orr, we've been in this situation before with Zach Orr, and just necks in general. You don't want to mess with the neck in the position that he plays where his neck is exposed or hit multiple times. You really want to be careful with it. And in fact, again, we don't know what type of neck injury it is yet. They haven't disclosed if it's a neck strain, if it's a fusion issue or what have you. All that leads me to believe it's something serious. So and also the fact that he already, you're not playing against the Chiefs. We already know he's not playing against the Chiefs. All that tells me it's serious. How serious, we don't know for sure, but it's definitely scary to think about again because of all the experience that Ravens fans have and NFL fans in general with this stuff. And the Ravens are going to put the players' health first. That human aspect is real over there, and the Castle so much appreciated to that organization for that. But yeah, it's not looking good. And from the football aspect, this team does not look the same without him on the football field. So certainly going to find out something hopefully soon, but it does not sound good.
Yeah, there are a wide range of outcomes here. It could just be something that requires a few games missed. Could be something where he does have to go on IR. Could be season ending. Could be career ending. We don't know anything right now. But with the update that was given, didn't necessarily sound super encouraging. So we're gonna have to wait and see because you're right, Sam. I mean, Nnamdi is such a big important part of this defense, and losing him this early in the season would be a massive blow, especially considering the lack of success they've had at the pass rushing position. So in that case, I mean, even if he's able to return, there's already been a lot of people clamoring for the Ravens to make a move on the interior. It hasn't been working out through the first 3 weeks. If Nnamdi's lost for any amount of time, especially if it's a season-ending thing, at that point, I think you kind of have to make a move. And it's early enough in the season where you still have a couple months to work with the trade deadline. Because at this point, do you go out there and try to sign a Christian Wilkins? Is it a Dexter Lawrence in New York? Is it Jeffrey Simmons in Tennessee? Q, you're the speculation expert here, so I'll start with you. Are you worried that if Nnamdi has to miss extended periods of time, this D-line just does not have juice and they need to make a move?
Well, they need to make a move even if he is healthy and ready to go. I'm over it. I just think that this is a ball club that has really struggled. I normally would be like, no, we don't need to make any kind of move. We just need to hold pat. We need to make a move. We need them to go ahead and trade. Trade for a guy, upgrade the roster. That whole flow needs to happen now. And I think this is kind of crazy because you're exposing yourself to further once you get into this portion of the season, teams will start to lock in and they smell that blood in the water. And right now, the D line is the blood in the water. All we got to do is just Travis Jones. I mean, just double team him, and everybody else is just going to be one-on-one, and we just gash them. Well, that's easy. The way in which the Ravens operate, it's by defeating those one-on-one blocks, confusing offensive lines, but they just don't have the depth nor the outright talent to be able to do it. Jared Goff had a clean jersey because no one could get to him. We know that Mike Green is young and he's still developing, but I guess they want to drop him back into pass coverage on 3rd and 8. We don't know why. But at the same time, when it comes to Odafe Owe, it's almost Odafe O almost. And so there's no way we can see Owe being able to get those double-digit sacks that we saw before. Cal Van Noy, KVN, well, he's trying to be CNN and see you later and resting up. We're trying to figure out what's going on with this defensive front because right now offenses are sitting back like, won't got to worry about it. And don't get me started on the missed tackles, 20 of them, which is just obscene and absurd. And I don't even think that's a real stat. That's how mind-boggling that is to me.
Yeah, I just don't know. I think the Ravens will need to make a move to shore up the interior of the line. Hopefully the Ravens get some better penetration as far as what the pass rushers are able to do. The run rate has not been good for them so far. Odafe Owe, contract year. I thought I'd see more from him at this point. Not there yet. Tavius Robinson would probably need to step up a little bit more. I think in-house the pass rushers are the pass rushers. I don't think you're going to find, I think the interior is way more important right now to solidify, trade for. You can get some good value pieces without breaking the quote-unquote pick bank as far as the draft is concerned. So I think interior is definitely an issue. It had been an issue even with Madubuike in there. I know a lot of people want Michael Pierce to come out of retirement. I just interviewed the guy, cheap plug, and he is not coming back out of retirement, just to let you know. But I think the Ravens find a way to get somebody in there to help out because you're not going to do anything if you're not putting pressure on the quarterback. I know the run defense is a concern. Everybody's worried about the 200 yards. Got to get to the quarterback in the National Football League in the postseason. You're going to see Josh Allen again. You're probably going to see Patrick Mahomes again, even if he's 1-3. I don't care. Chiefs are going to find a way. Chargers are probably going to be the 1 or 2 seed if I had to ponder a guess, but on the way their team is playing overall. Justin Herbert, you do not want to get that guy time. And you're worried about play action like you were with Jared Goff. It's going to be doubly worse with the Chargers because of what Greg Roman was able to do with that offense. So get to the quarterback. That's the name of the game. Harbaugh said it. We need to get a pass rush. You're not going to get it from the guys in the locker room. You better get it through the draft. Through trade, I should say.
Yamil, PR, bruh. When you said start Ajabo, you done lost your mind. They played Ajabo.
They did.
He was out there. It was one of those situations that he literally was non-existent too. He's a part of the D line. they played him. When they went on a 96-yard drive, the 98 one was bad, but the 96 one, he started it off. He was one of the guys that was the first guys out there. So you can say start a Jabo, but I think we're past the point of a Jabo out there doing anything to help this ball club out.
Yeah, Jabo's not going to have a Jabo for much longer. If I have to come under a guess.
Oh, man, we're just making puns about Jabo and Owe, and man, I'm telling you, and I know your meal was just kidding. I know. He's out there. He's kidding around, but I'm about to, before we head into the break, I'm gonna make the agenda that I think we all need to be on right now, and it requires rooting against the team. You know, I'm not rooting against another team, especially not in the AFC. Calais Campbell, bring him home.
Yes.
Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals going to lose every game they play. Bring them home. Bring Calais
All
home.
I'm saying is he's liking himself out there in Arizona a little bit too much. That's the problem. He's enjoying himself. Yeah. And he don't got to pay no state income tax.
Man, well, he can like it in Baltimore more. That's what he can come back with the crab cakes in the Old Bay and enjoy himself and hopefully win a Super Bowl. So I'm starting it here right now. Bring Calais Campbell home. I know technically he was there and he was in Arizona for most of his career. I get it, but we're saying bring Calais Campbell home. That's the agenda that I'm trying to push here. But we're gonna take a little stoppage here. But coming up, we're gonna dive into a little bit more of the defensive scheme for the Ravens. We'll start to dive in a little bit more to the Kansas City matchup as well, and kind of some things to look out for in that regard too. So be sure to stay tuned. We have a lot coming your way on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. First, this show is brought to you by Gametime. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. Let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping to checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets, delivered on time, and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. And I pulled up Gametime in just a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100 in the app. Makes it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. And I love zone deals too. You pick the section in Gametime, picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Back here on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show, Kevin Oestreicher, Kadri Ismail, Sam Njoku, still talking Ravens, talking about, unfortunately, how the Ravens defense just seems to be in shambles right now in multiple different ways, injury-wise, performance on the field-wise, and you have could be the most important matchup of your season coming up in week number 4 against the Chiefs to hopefully avoid a 1-3 start. Again, we're here for you on Wednesdays on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show, as well as after games. So we'll be back on Sunday after the Ravens and Chiefs game. Hopefully a lot more joyous than the one after Monday night, and a lot earlier for Q though. So at least we have that going. It's going to be a lot earlier in the day. So Q will be alert and alive and awake with us on that one. So you can always, at least if it's not 1 a.m. start time, we're probably be around 7, 8 p.m. That's a lot easier to manage there. But you can also hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens content and coverage on this show. But let's, guys, dive into Zach Orr a little bit. And I'm trying to keep up with the chat as best as I can. And I saw, if I can find it, a comment from Heather asking about Chuck Pagano and Dean Pease. Now, Pease is no longer with the team, that he is not involved anymore, but Chuck Pagano obviously comes in as the secondary guy, obviously former Ravens defensive coordinator, former head coach. He knows a thing or two about the game. And I think the thing with Zach Orr right now, guys, is that he's just inexperienced. And some of the things we've seen, I mean, mentioning dropping guys back into coverage and playing guys off at certain points, getting too cute at times. The thing that made Mike McDonald so good, and, coming from Wink Martindale to Mike McDonald, I mean, Wink was just blitz, 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 blitz. It was cover zero the whole way. He lived by the blitz and died by the blitz. Mike Macdonald was so calculated in what he did. The blitz percentage dropped, but he was able to understand when to utilize that. And I think everybody sees the success that he's having in Seattle. And it's like, please, Mike, come back. Please, we need you. We need you. But unfortunately, that is not going to happen. Q, I want to start with you in terms of what you're seeing from Zach Orr in the scheme and the system right now. And I know we've talked about it a little bit here, but just kind of a specific question about it. Is this, to you, I personally believe it's not 100% on anybody. Part of it's coaching, part of it's execution. But if you had to lean one way or the other here, is it the scheme is just not getting through to guys, or is it execution? They're not doing their jobs within the system. What are you kind of seeing out there?
So there's that one saying, it's not about the X's and O's, but about the Jims and Joes. I think it's about the X's and O's, and Zo is looking at his Jims and Joes and saying, why can't y'all do what I'm asking you to do? This is where, yes, you have a defense under Mike Macdonald that was very versatile. But it wasn't that his defense was like so versatile that it was just the defense. It was the Jims and Joes. That's why we kept talking about Jadeveon Clowney. That's why we were paying Madubuike. That's why when we look at Kyle Van Noy, or when we saw the way Roquan was playing, or when we know Kyle Hamilton was doing what he was doing, or the sneaky way you had guys coming off the edge and creating that secondary pressure. Right now, I think it's like Zach Orr is saying, well, let me, get a couple of those ideas that we had before, but I know that some of our fellow podcast brethren, they do an excellent job of their podcasts of breaking down film, and I'm sitting there watching the one, and he was like, yo, what's our guy doing, where they were in a formation, a defensive formation, and you see Marlon Humphrey in the box. And it caught me off guard because I was like, well, no. Maybe it's just because, sometimes, the receiver motion, well, there's no receiver there. I'm tripping. Maybe it's just the formation. Oh, no, the formation. I was like, wait a minute, he's legit in the box. So you go back and look at the film, and you see that it looks like they're trying to be too fancy with the spices. But part of being fancy with the spices is I don't think that they fully.
No.
And so now they're trying to do anything they can to confuse the opposing team's offense. But it's Jared Goff. How are you going to confuse him? He's seen so much. And that's the exploitation that they put upon this Ravens ball club. And now you're sitting there and you're looking foolish with some of the schemes that you're doing because they're simply not working.
I completely agree with you 100%. No notes. I mean, perfectly summarized about what this defense is going through. Now, I love Mike Macdonald. I literally watched every single play he made from the 2023 season all the way to the AFC Championship game. He is a wizard among wizards. He is the Kyle Shanahan of defenses, and he is just so good at play calling. So that's a huge absence for this team, and it's on Harbaugh because you substitute a guy who is probably one of the best play callers in recent history in terms of defense with an inexperienced play caller. It's not going to be a smooth transition. Now, again, some of it is on the players. I mean, you're not getting penetration as a defensive lineman. There's no scheme in the world that's going to help you, do that. You need to be able to just beat your man one-on-one. They haven't been able to do that. But on the back end, it's totally, a lot. I saw the clip too, Q. What is Marlon Humphrey doing in the box? I mean, you could see certain instances where Kyle Hamilton's that guy. I could see that maybe being the case where you have Kyle in the box and you have him on the blitz, but at one point, Teddy Buchanan was on the slot. I mean, there was completely reversed positions. I don't know what the Ravens are trying to do. I'm not a defensive coordinator, so I can't say. What I can say is it is noticeable. And if the podcaster can notice it, and if I can notice it, then you best believe the OC over there in Detroit noticed it. And if you don't think Andy Reid's going to notice it or Patrick Mahomes is going to notice it, then you're in for a big surprise on Sunday. So Yeah, it's a huge, huge letdown. I like Zach Aurora. I think that, I'm rooting for him to be, transition from player to coach is not easy. He's made it up to DC. It's just not been working out the whole year. I'm not going to say first half, second half. 2024, they were ranked near the bottom in pass defense. So far this year, they're ranked near the bottom in every major statistical category for sure. I would hope that the defense gets it together because it's hard for me to envision him staying a Raven, at least the DC for this team in 2026, if this play continues.
Now, here is my counterpoint. It's not, maybe counterpoint's the wrong word, but here is another argument I'd like to present. How many shields is John Harbaugh going to get in these situations? And I'm staying consistent with this because I've been consistent about this for years on Locked On Ravens, just myself, is you have a second-year defensive coordinator. You have a third-year offensive coordinator. You have fired one offensive coordinator. You technically have fired two in a Lamar Jackson era because Marty Mornhinweg did not get the opportunity. It was Greg Roman who got promoted to that job.
Yeah.
Wink Martindale gets fired. They bring in Mike McDonald. He leaves. There's been a lot of coaches that have come through, but as I've said, you cannot tell me that John Harbaugh does not have his fingerprints all over this team. He's the head coach. His title is head coach. And so to me, I think Zach Orr, yes, while it's not working right now, yes, while there might be a change that has to happen, yes, while we know Eric DeCosta is certainly not shy about making a move and saying, hey, this isn't working, we're moving on, and we're getting something else in here that maybe can work. The Ravens are not going to fire John Harbaugh during the season, right? I want to make that clear. My opinion, if anything would happen, it would happen after the year.
Agreed.
But I just don't know, in my opinion, how many coordinators you can, because my thing has been like, what's next? The special teams coordinator gets fired and Harbaugh gets, it's at that point. So, Sam, I'll start with you. I mean, is John Harbaugh's seat truly hot at this point? Or do you still think that, it could be a coordinator or a player that kind of takes the fall here, and then maybe if the season ends disappointingly, then it's John Harbaugh?
I could see him making a change in the middle of the season if it gets crazy. Now, John Harbaugh is loyal to a fault at times. We all know that. So I could see him sticking around, but I firmly believe that Harbaugh is on the hot seat, whether he likes to admit it or not, especially if this play continues down this path. Now, I fully expect the Ravens to make the postseason. I think they'll be dangerous in the postseason. I still think they have the most potent quarterback on the most potent offense in the league. So that'll certainly help out. But at what point, as you mentioned, do we stop with the excuses and kind of hiding the fact that this is on Harbaugh? When the Ravens win, Harbaugh gets all the love. When he won that Super Bowl, even though he took over a Ravens team that was pretty stacked and knew what they had to do, then, he's still gotten a lot of praise over the years, and he deserves it. I think I love Harbaugh. You guys know, if you guys have watched me over the years, I'm a big Harbaugh guy, but Andy Reid got fired. Everybody gets fired. Bill Belichick is not a Patriot. These guys, no one stays a head coach forever. If you want to be a head coach, you better be able to, 1, win, 2, change, morph, adjust to situations. So we're waiting for that adjustment for John Harbaugh with this team. Still think he has a chance to make the postseason and do damage, but if he doesn't make the championship, I know Steve Bisciotti loves John and Eric DeCosta. It's a cohesive unit, but I'd be hard-pressed to see any chance that he remains a Raven, even though the backlash, if he remains, would be pretty high.
Interesting, because we look at the chat and our guys are also saying John is on a hot seat, rightly so. But you're also saying EDC is on a hot seat for some of his draft choices. Look, this is about our depth. I shouldn't say the Ravens' depth. We sit back and look at it from afar, but the Ravens' depth has been the issue. And so when you look at their depth at linebacker, when you look at their depth on the offensive line, when you look at their depth on the D line, there are issues there. We always see that they're trying to acquire different values and all the compensatory and get all fancy with the numbers. But when it comes down to talent and studs, that's all I want to see. I want to see oh, wow, for the way this pick was, and then this guy, and over here, because 4 years down the road, once removed, divide by 3 with the decimal point moved over 2 spaces. Woo! We're going to be the 53rd pick of the 88th round in the 2089 draft.
Love it.
What are we doing here with all this like metrics that don't make no sense? And we're talking about, yeah, we got to put together a roster that has some studs, some guys that can be ballers. Now, to the point of John, I've said this before. Boy, Sam, you said it perfectly. Yes, Andy Reid got fired. Andy Reid was extremely successful in Philly. But you look at Nick Sirianni and you look at Andy Reid in Kansas City. Yes, they got their feet put to the fire. They changed and they won championships. That's the new measuring stick. We can't be looking at well, we want continuity. Do you want to win Super Bowls or do you want to win the continuity game? If you want to win the continuity game, keep it status quo and let's continue forth.
There are a lot of things that they need to improve on, and they need to do it fast because that Kansas City game, and plus they're on a short week, by the way. I think that also kind of puts some more pressure on them. So coming up in the final part of the show, we're going to be diving into a little bit more of what each team needs to do to win that game and what the Ravens need to do to move the Chiefs down to that 1-3 record. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way here on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. First, this show is brought to you by Wayfair. And when you think game day, you might not think Wayfair, but you should, because Wayfair is the best kept secret for incredible and affordable game day finds. And the big thing here is that for me, I picked a grill, and it completely leveled up my game day setup. I'm a big grill guy, and what I love most in the selection that Wayfair has, they have unique finds and options for every budget, so I can show off my team spirit without overspending. And delivery was free, it was fast, and it was hassle-free. This is a lifesaver when you need something in time for kickoff, from outdoor essentials like folding chairs and patio heaters to indoor must-haves like TV stands and serveware. Wayfair has it all in one place. Wayfair is your trusted destination for all things game day, from coolers and grills to recliners and slow cookers. Shop, save, and score today at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Locked On Ravens Squad Show. We're back. Kevin Oestreicher, Kadri Ismail, Sam Njoku, still diving into Ravens content and coverage. Again, hit the like and subscribe button in video form and in audio form. We got you covered on Wednesdays here on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show, as well as after every single game. So be sure you tap in with us here. And, of course, you can find the regular Locked On Ravens programming Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time with myself. And Sam and Q each have their days on that, too. So if you like what you hear from them, you can obviously check them out on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show and on Locked On Ravens as well. But, guys, let's move ahead a little bit into this Chiefs game here. Chiefs haven't been playing well when it comes to a lot of things here, right? The offense hasn't been great for Kansas City. They've been trying to figure things out themselves, and just like we all suspected, the 1-2 Ravens will face the 1-2 Chiefs. That's how we drew it up before the season started, right? That's what we all had. We all were on the same page. No, of course not. But when you talk about keys to this game and what you're kind of looking for, at least what the biggest thing the Ravens need to improve, because look, we hear a pass rush, we hear offensive line, we hear coaching, right? A lot of fumbles, turnovers from Derrick Henry, like sacks. Sam, I'll start with you. What's the biggest thing? If you had to pick one of these things that's going wrong for the Ravens to right that could give them the best opportunity to beat the Chiefs, what is that thing to you?
Get to the quarterback. I think it's as simple as that. Rush the passer. I know Patrick Mahomes hasn't had the craziest of games. I think the last game he was 22 of 37, 224 yards, and only a touchdown against the Giants. They're running attack again. They only had Isaiah Pacheco 10 for 45 yards, so averaging about 4.5 yards a carry. He's not, going to be the guy to break this team. I think the Ravens have done a pretty good job against pedestrian running backs. Only sample size is obviously the Browns, but all this considered, you still have a semblance of a chance to stop the run. I think Roquan Smith won't be scared to go off against Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. Does he perform up to the task? We don't know, but cannot leave Patrick Mahomes. I don't care who he's throwing to. He can have me out there in cleats, and he will find me in the end zone if he has enough time to do so. So get to the quarterback. If you don't get to the quarterback, we're in for another shootout. I don't care what you say, because Pat Mahomes isn't Joe Flacco. He's not going to stand there in the pocket and just wait. He's going to be moving around. And if your guys can't get to him, it's going to be a long day. I don't care how many points you're able to put on the board as an offense.
Interesting, because if you look at Roquan, and I know Buchanan is a young player, but if you look at both of those guys, they need to have a huge game. And what I mean by that, we know the defensive front is going to be hurt, but whether you're run blitzing, whether you're spying, whether you're covering, whether it be Travis Kelce that you're covering or Pacheco out of the backfield, like, they need to have a big game. I think this is going to be really the telltale mark for both guys. And I know that when it comes to taking advantage of the Ravens, for what we've seen in the past, it's the way in which the linebackers either play well or they struggle. And that's where Andy Reid and company makes the Ravens pay. I think that's the line in the sand that needs to be drawn to say, hey, you want to get a victory? The linebacking core, they have to play well. Again, you are who you are. Your career is your career. Adafe, he's going to do his best. And, hopefully he'll do something as far as pressuring, but that's what it is. Mike Green, we're just hoping that, he continually, steadily grows and gets better, and they don't put him in positions where it's going to hinder him dropping back on 3rd and 8. There, I said it. Okay. Now, at the same time, when you're talking about some of the way in which, the offense has been, you got to allow for Lamar to have a outlet guy and not necessarily think that throwing the football down a football field, without a check down because you got Lamar. Whatever the reason, Lamar was holding the ball on those 7 sacks, and there was no outlet guy. I know part of this offense is, well, we don't need a check down guy. We got Lamar, but for whatever the reason, Lamar is not looking to run. So I think the priority is to shift it a little bit, to have a little bit. I know the intermediate routes are there, but when they're not there, you better have that backup guy to be able to have an outlet for Lamar to go to. Otherwise, we're going to see another Chris Jones sack fest that we saw when literally, the Lions, Aiden Hutchinson was just having his way. Muhammad was having his way. Campbell was having his way. I know Chris Jones is looking at that film and he's drooling and like, oh, this is my opportunity. You got to give Lamar some help. If you're trying to stretch the ball down the field, you got to give him some outlet help so he doesn't have to take those unnecessary hits.
Yeah, scheming those things open is going to be really, really important for them. And, the offensive line protection, you could tell that Lamar doesn't trust those guys right now, at least the way that we've seen him. And, you never want to have a quarterback with, they call it happy feet back there. So, they need to get it right, because when you are in a situation right now, and it's crazy because all of us have kind of talked about it. I don't necessarily feel that the Ravens are going to lose this division. It's not about, I think that the AFC North is so weak this year that even with the early season struggles, they'll be able to kind of come out of this and win the division. It's not necessarily about that, but it's about, these are the teams you're going to face in the postseason. And so far you're 0-2 in those moments. And, a 1-3 start, if that's what happens on Sunday, is very hard to climb out of, regardless of the opponents that you're playing. So, to you guys, how disastrous is a 1-3 start in your minds? And you can factor in everything here, from the vibes to some of the trends we've seen to the schedule. I'll start with you. How big of a concern would it be if this team does drop to 1-3 the first month of the year?
Well, it would be disastrous. It would be one of those scenarios where you're looking deep within and trying to figure out if you even have a shot to make the playoffs. Lucky that your division, Pittsburgh is a roller coaster ride unto itself. Cleveland is Cleveland, although you did beat them, but their defense, I'm sure They're going to be licking their chops. Hopefully, Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel will be like, "Oh my God, we're playing! Oh God, we got to play the Ravens." Houston, ironically enough, is the team after, I believe, the upcoming Chiefs. So they're not exactly playing the greatest either. So there's teams that are looking the Rams. They're in a position where, I mean, they're really good, but they lack that finish. And clearly, what they did against the Eagles, they will show up, and then all of a sudden, 2 blocked field goals, and you're like, whoa. So they lack that finish as well. I'm not saying that the season is lost, but for darn sure, I'm not going to be sitting there thinking that we taking that road trip across the country to San Francisco. I think the Super Bowl hopes are lost, and now it's just hang on for dear life and see if you can salvage it by getting a wild card spot somewhere in the playoff and hope to the high heavens that you don't stink it up in the playoffs.
Yeah, it'll be disastrous. I don't think there's any other way to put it. It'll be totally disastrous. When you put in comparison what our thoughts were for this team entering the season. Now, as Q mentioned, the AFC North is not good. It's not good. I don't care. The Bengals are 2-1. They'll be 2-15 by the end of the season, or 2-14, 2-15. Yeah. Steelers, same thing. I think the Steelers probably have a better chance to do something, but they're pedestrian on offense. Their defense is yet to light that spark that they need to be the team they were in 2024. And the Browns are the Browns. So, I mean, going 1-3 would not be the end of the world in terms of hosting a playoff game in the wild card round, but that means you're for sure traveling to Buffalo in the postseason. You're for sure traveling out west to Los Angeles to play the Chargers. And you may even be back in Arrowhead somehow, some way, depending on what the Chiefs are able to do, because that means the Chiefs are 2-2. You don't think they're going to have their mojo back after beating Lamar Jackson at home during the 4:25 p.m. slot? I don't know. So I think it is going to be a must-win game for them in terms of psyche. That this will begin a roller coaster of emotions, and thoughts of doubt will creep on this team. We all know, Q, you know more than anybody, this game is majority a mental thing, being mentally prepared for these games. So I don't know. I'd be concerned if they fall to 1-3. They do have the Texans next, who are 0-3, so that gives you some confidence. But you got the Rams coming up as well. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like 1-3 would be a bad look, and that's not a far-fetched outcome considering what the Ravens have shown the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's tough all the way around. I mean, it would, disastrous is the right word to use. 1-3 is a very tough hole to climb out of. And while the division is weak and schedule opens up a little bit, like, yeah, you're right. Like, they do have some tough teams remaining on this schedule. So they're going to have to figure it out quickly, because the NFL does not stop to say, oh, hey, let's try to figure out some things. Take 3 weeks off and nope, you're going. And maybe, they have that week 7 bye this year. Maybe that actually is a blessing in disguise that it's a little earlier this year, considering some of the stuff that they're going through. Obviously, we'll know if they truly need it after just a couple more weeks, but I tend to give things a month. I say 4 weeks of the year, then we can start saying this is a trend or that is a trend. So this is the big game for me of like, okay, if things are still the same and they still can't, whether it's generate pressure, protect Lamar, fumbles, whatever it may be. Actually, one of the big things they've improved at, and I'll give them credit, is penalties. Only 3 penalties for 10 yards in that Detroit game. So they've been a lot better in that regard. But, this is a huge game coming up. They absolutely have to win it. And I saw we got a lot of people with us here on the Locked On Ravens squad, which I really appreciate. I saw we got the Purple Rain podcast in here, which is awesome. So whether that's Sutton or simply checking in, appreciate you. And thanks to everybody who tunes in, listens to us here on the Locked On Ravens squad show, and just Locked On Ravens in general. It's all we have for you here today. So for myself, Sam, and Q, we thank you for watching and listening to this show. We'll be back here again on Locked On Ravens squad show on Sunday after the game. Of course, I'll be back here tomorrow with another edition of the Locked On Ravens podcast, breaking down everything that you need to know about this Baltimore Ravens team. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form. We'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.